You wake up every morning in one of the world's wealthiest nations, check your bank account, and feel poor. Indeed, this cognitive dissonance defines modern middle-class existence in Britain, where prosperity has become a mirage that retreats the closer you approach it. Meanwhile, across the globe, people earning wages that would horrify you sleep soundly without financial anxiety. They eat well, cover their expenses comfortably, and face each day with optimism about their economic future. Furthermore, these aren't the wealthy elite of emerging economies, but ordinary workers in Vietnam whose modest incomes somehow translate into genuine financial security. Yes, the uncomfortable truth is that your middle-class British lifestyle might actually represent a more precarious existence than that of Vietnam's working poor. When housing, energy, and food costs consume most of your income, before you can consider anything else, the mathematics of prosperity become far more complex than simple salary comparisons suggest. So, in today's episode, we explore this jarring paradox where absolute income in the UK tells only half the story, and where modest wages coupled with low living costs create something increasingly foreign to British experience: genuine financial peace of mind. It's officially autumn 2025, and the UK middle class trudges to work under the drizzle, soaked by rain and by an economy that leaves them poorer with every paycheck. You see, inflation is stuck at 3.8%. Real wages have crawled up by barely 0.5%, and the average latte now costs as if it were imported from Mars. Economists issue sunny bulletins promising relief, but commuters scrolling their phones know better. The promise of prosperity has slipped, and Britain's middle class is starting to feel less prosperous than Vietnam's so-called poor. 4.5 million households slipped behind on bills this spring. For many, the monthly mortgage, an average of £1,038, has transformed from a ticket to stability into an iron chain around the ankle. The dream of home ownership increasingly feels like an expensive joke that only the bank finds funny. Britain's economy, we are told, is trudging along with growth of 1.2%, though it feels more heritage steam engine than Formula One car. Tariffs and bureaucracy choke any hint of momentum, and welfare keeps the scaffolding upright, while the whole structure creaks like a Georgian townhouse held together with duct tape. Cost of living angst tops every poll and every pub conversation, as unshakable as the drizzle outside. Britain clings to its appearance of calm, a Barber jacket masking the threadbare lining. But the facade frays, and beneath it, the middle class knows the quiet humiliation of sliding backwards. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Hanoi wakes to a very different morning. The sun cuts through smog as scooters swarm intersections, engines buzzing like a city determined never to stand still. Street vendors sling bowls of poo from carts that double as dynasties, the air alive with chili, caffeine, and raw ambition. Vietnam barrels ahead with growth of 7.5% in the first half of the year. Salaries remain modest, about $314 a month, but here that money stretches like elastic. 53 million workers channel foreign investment into factories that spit out tomorrow's goods, yesterday's nostalgia forgotten. Exports surged by 14.5%, shrugging off trade wars as though tariffs were someone else's problem. And while Britain frets over energy bills, Vietnam lands near the top of Southeast Asia's happiness charts, a cheerful reminder that prosperity is measured in the electric hum of opportunity as much as in pounds or dollars. The government presses forward with a zeal Britain can only envy. Roads, ports, and technology hubs sprout where rice paddies once stood. Basic living expenses remain dramatically lower than in the United Kingdom, meaning life here does not require a Faustian bargain with debt collectors. Foreign investment flows like monsoon rain into factories that hum with 24-hour productivity. And so the comparison writes itself. Britain, bogged down by the ballast of its own history, shuffles along with its middle class increasingly brittle. Vietnam, still lean, still hungry, sprints forward with every intention of overtaking. Raw economics tells the uncomfortable truth. Britain clings to glories past, Vietnam builds the future on fumes of momentum. One economy balks at the bend. The other barrels through the storm, and somewhere between drizzle-soaked Manchester and scooter-clogged Hanoi lies the cruelest punchline of all. The middle classes are no longer traveling the same road. They are playing entirely different sports. But when the numbers are finally tallied, the arithmetic reveals a truth more uncomfortable than any weather forecast. The arithmetic should be simple enough for a child's textbook. British middle-class earners pull down $2,672 monthly after the taxman takes his share, while Vietnam's minimum wage workers scrape together $169, 15.8 times the difference, a chasm that should settle any debate about who lives better. Except mathematics, like weather forecasts, can lie with startling precision. Because here's the rub that makes economists squirm. Britain's middle class spends 86% of their income simply staying alive. Housing, heating, feeding, moving, the basics devour nearly everything before luxury even whispers its name. Meanwhile, in the sweltering streets of Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam's poor navigate an economy where a doctor's consultation costs $8 instead of $98, where housing claims $80 to $200 monthly, rather than the £1,038 that haunts British first-time buyers like a recurring nightmare. The cruel joke writes itself in grocery receipts and energy bills. British food costs have climbed 27.3% since 2022, while energy bills spiked 54% in a single year, transforming the simple act of eating and staying warm into a minor financial crisis. 1 in 5 middle-income earners now struggle to afford food and essentials, a phrase that would have sounded absurd just a decade ago when middle class meant security rather than survival. Vietnam's poor, meanwhile, feast on food and transport together, consume vastly smaller chunks of their modest paychecks, leaving breathing room that Britain's squeezed middle class can barely remember. This represents prosperity in no traditional sense. It's the strange freedom that comes from operating in an economy that hasn't yet priced out its own people. The disparity reveals itself in the most mundane comparisons. A Vietnamese minimum wage worker can see a doctor for the price of a British parking meter. They can eat well for what Britons spend on a single meal deal. Their monthly transport costs amount to loose change in a British wallet. While UK households watch their heating bills with the anxiety of wartime rationing, Vietnamese families worry about different things entirely, but rarely whether they can afford to stay warm. This concerns quality in no way. British healthcare, education, and infrastructure remain leagues ahead. This is about the slow strangulation of choice that occurs when basic survival consumes everything. Britain's middle class inherits the legacy of a developed economy's price structure, while their wages flatline against inflation's relentless march. They're trapped in an expensive paradise, locked into mortgage payments that would fund months of comfortable living in Hanoi. The legacy trap springs from success itself. Britain built the infrastructure, regulations, and quality standards that now price out the very people they were meant to serve. Vietnam's poor may lack many things, but they possess something Britain's middle class has lost: the ability to live within their means without constant financial anxiety. But purchasing power tells only half the story. The other half lives in the shadows of what money cannot buy, and there, the comparison takes a darker turn. What money cannot buy reveals itself in the things that matter most: momentum, optimism, and the electric buzz of a nation convinced tomorrow will surpass today. Vietnam's gross domestic product expanded 7.52% in the first half of 2025, the fastest first-half pace in 15 years, while Britain's middle class watched their purchasing power erode in real time. Manufacturing exports reached $262.44 billion, surging 14.8% year-on-year, as electronics and computers now constitute 31.9% of total exports. Vietnam ranked first globally in 3 critical indices: high-tech imports, high-tech exports, and creative goods exports as a percentage of total trade, a technological leapfrog that would make Silicon Valley envious. The average Vietnamese worker earns between $420 to $600 monthly, yet operates within an ecosystem where salaries grow 10.1% annually, while British wages stagnate against inflation's relentless tide. Urban Vietnamese workers earn 1.4 times rural wages, but the crucial difference lies in trajectory. Incomes rise consistently, while opportunity expands rather than contracts. Vietnam added 553,200 people to its workforce in the first half of 2025 alone, each new worker entering expanding industries rather than declining sectors. 22 million young people comprise 36% of the labor force, carrying digital fluency and global perspectives that transform rice paddies into Silicon Valleys within a single generation. Foreign direct investment poured $21.52 billion into Vietnam in the first half of 2025, a 32.6% increase that reflects global confidence in the nation's trajectory. Meanwhile, Britain's middle class inherits the infrastructure, regulations, and quality standards that now price them out of the very prosperity they were meant to enjoy. The startup ecosystem attracted $529 million in venture capital during 2024, funding 6.6 million young entrepreneurs aged 30 to 34, who view modest salaries as launching pads rather than limitations. Vietnam ranks 46th globally in the 2025 World Happiness Report, climbing 31 places in 4 years to become the second happiest nation in Southeast Asia. This happiness stems from velocity rather than wealth. Vietnamese families witness improvement across generations, while British families confront stagnation or decline across the same metrics. The psychological difference between Vietnamese optimism and British middle-class anxiety reflects their respective economic narratives. One ascends, while the other plateaus. Vietnamese workers entering the labor market join expanding industries with rising wages and advancing technology, while British middle-class workers often face contracting opportunities and obsolescing skills. Vietnam possesses something Britain's middle class has lost: the ability to dream within their means and achieve beyond their expectations. The velocity of the new poor has become the template for 21st century prosperity, where direction matters more than destination and acceleration counts more than current position. In this tale of two economies, the moral writes itself with brutal clarity. Wealth without momentum becomes poverty with better furniture, while poverty with velocity becomes tomorrow's prosperity in embryonic form. And now we'd like to see you in the comments. Are you a native Brit? And if so, what is your opinion on the current economy? We look forward to hearing from you below, and thanks for joining us.